Well, that's the nearest approach to being a bird. Straight into the air, wonderful mobility, and here I am down at Taymouth Castle. When Queen Victoria came here, she came from London, first of all, by yacht, and it took 66 hours, and then she travelled the slow way to Taymouth. She wouldn't travel by train, the reason being there had been 45 accidents at that time of the birth of the railways. But it was the railways that brought people to the Highlands and created an era of change, which of course I saw in my own lifetime. And more recently, more dramatic changes due to universal motor car ownership. I'm away into Kenmore to see some of the changes. Robert Burns was a visitor to Kenmore long before Queen Victoria. This is what our national bard wrote. "Fain Breadalbin opens to my view, the village glittering in the noontide beam." The third Earl of Breadalbin had just built the model village of Kenmore when Burns came, and he saw something very unusual in the Highlands, a village that had been planned on a beautiful site above Loch Tay, where the river emerges on its way to the sea. The Earl had built neat houses on each side of the square, with the old kirk and its mound as a centrepiece, and he let the houses rent-free to tradesmen so as they would keep it tidy and neat. Queen Victoria was to see Kenmore 20 years after her first memorable visit to Scotland, but this time there was no feudal grandeur. Her hosts were dead, but the square was full of life. There was a fair in progress, and this oldest hotel in Scotland would be busy. The kirk was built in 1572. Discipline was so severe that action was taken against any villager who gathered hazelnuts on a Sunday, and the poor had to be good attenders at the kirk if they wanted a handout from the poor box. I learned a lot about the kirk and how things are today from Kenneth McVicker, the parish minister.
This church was built in 400 years ago. We've just had our 400th anniversary in 1979. And but the great thing is that I like to remember that since 1794, I'm one of the fifth in the parish church. And I've been here 32 years, and another 10 years I will come up to the average. The villages round about have been very much almost rebuilt in some ways. And of course, a good deal of council housing has been built. Some of our hamlets have disappeared as living units, unfortunately. But it's quite amazing. I used to visit people who had no electric lighting in their housing and no indoor toilet facilities of any kind. Now that doesn't pertain. The main changes over the years has been the tourist industry, and that has kept our employment fairly steady. And one way and another, we in this part of the world have been most fortunate because instead of our population going down, it has risen.
The lines of Robert Burns almost anticipate this sight, the outstretched lake embosomed among the hills, the eye with wonder and amazement fills. It was a surprise to me that the outlet of Loch Tay was such a mecca of sun worshippers. There's more to a beach than just paddling. When you have a motor car, you can carry a windsurfer or canoe, hire a sailing dinghy or a pair of water skis. And apart from a huge caravan park just round the corner, there's a marina and holiday chalets. When Burns was here, the 3,000 small holders winning a hard living from the land didn't even know the meaning of holidays. Nowadays, scenery is a saleable asset. Even Burns, who was not noted for describing the beauties of the landscape, was moved by this place, where a tunnel has been bored through the hill, and when you've worked your way through it, suddenly you come in on this, which moved him to write, "Poetic ardours in my bosom swell, lone wandering by the hermit's mossy cell, the sweeping theatre of hanging woods, the incessant roar of headlong, tumbling floods." Guests of the Breadalbins sometimes get more than a view, for as they emerged from the tunnel, a wild Highlander would leap down with a scream, brandishing his claymore as if to take Jacobite revenge. Of course, it's the Loch Shore that attracts most tourists now, and there's something here to make them stop and look. Old implements of the fields and kitchen, which a man with a great love of the countryside has gathered together. Cameron Thompson is a craftsman, wood carver and horn carver as well as a gardener. And since taking over an old house, being used as a hay shed in 1960, he has made a place of beauty of his bit of the Lord's burn. He calls these his wee men of the burn, and they never stop working as long as his water wheel turns them on. It's something that's exactly right, for in the old days this burn was harnessed for 2 water mills. Cameron draws the designs for the art objects he makes from the antlers of deer and the horns of cows. Brooches and birds are his specialty. He built his workshop in 3 weeks and a completely new house in 18 months of spare time. His most important commission was a shipper's crook with a Mingus crest for the Prime Minister of Australia.
It's all the local deer horn and that we use for the knife handles and that. I buy them off the deer stokers and slaughterhouses and knackery wagons. Just how I started when I was a bairn, I suppose, whittling my mother's kindling sticks and getting into trouble for making a mess in the floor when she was away milking the cows.
It was an interest that never lapsed at any time. You just went on and on making things.
I just kept going at it. Before I come here, you know, I made stuff and sold at the shops and that, and then I thought I would have a go on my own. I just drew the things out, you know, and made things, and well, the folk liked it and bought it. We do away not too badly. You know, we make an awful lot of different things, especially for folk their own designs and that.
What's the most interesting object you've ever made?
Oh, maybe that a wooden horse I have there. It's I made that. It took me a long time to make it. It was a tree that blew down, and I kept the wood. A block it and always said I would make something with it, and I made this horse. And it every now and again there's somebody offers me a ridiculous figure for it, and so I've given it to my daughter so I wouldn't part with it. My hobbies now is making fiddles.
And playing them?
That's my hobby now. But when I haven't got my garden, I do my garden in the summertime and make the fiddles the time of the snows.
Cameron has made 7 fiddles to date. He doesn't sell them, he gives them away. His ambition is to make a really superb instrument from local birch and Scots pine.
Keen in anything old, and I like the Gaelic too, you know, and I like went to evening classes for it for a while, and I like the Gaelic.
So that explains how the name of the house is in Gaelic?
Aye, that's my name and my wife's name put into one.
And how do you pronounce it?
Camúirish.
Cam for